Okay, the North Wales Wildlife Trust INS project with Helen Carter-Emsell. A little bit about Helen there, tiny bit. She's the Wellbeing Officer for the North Wales Resilient Ecosystem Pilot Project, NWREPPE for short. Been working for the North Wales Wildlife Trust though since September 2018 on the actual invasive non-native species project. She herself is passionate about wildlife and nature and all nature, and has a background in conservation, and particularly enjoys working with volunteers, which I'm sure is at work but must involve quite a lot of really, and sharing her skills. She loves working outdoors and has a talent for crafting. You can see examples of that behind her. Yes, there you go. Yeah, with natural materials, which she loves to tie in with the well-being aspects of her work. Maybe we should talk a bit about that too, actually, the well-being aspect of your work. That'd be quite interesting, to be honest. I'm intrigued by that. It's fantastic. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome you, Helen, and ask you to kind of say hello and share your screen. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for asking me to come and do this talk tonight. Hopefully it will be interesting for you all to listen to, and I'll try not to zoom through it really quickly because I might have a habit of talking a bit too fast. If I do go too fast, if anybody, just put your hand up and just ask me to slow down, but hopefully I won't. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I think, and then I'll put it on to play. There we go. Is that working now?
Is. Yeah, that's fine. That's good.
Excellent. So Mark's already done a lot of the introduction, but basically I'm just going to talk a little bit tonight about our invasive non-native species project here at North Wales Wildlife Trust. Let me just put that so I can see. Right, okay. So a little bit more of an introduction about who I am to start with. I think obviously, as Mark's already introduced me, you know that my name is Helen Carter-Emsell. I am the Wellbeing Officer for the NRAP Project at the moment, and I'm not going to go into detail about what that stands for yet, but I'll talk about that a little bit more as I get through the talk. So I've lived quite a few years in Sheffield, and while I was in Sheffield, I studied environmental conservation at Sheffield Hallam University. I found out about conservation as a mature adult, as a mature student. I didn't really know that you could do that as a career, so when I discovered you could, I was very enthusiastic about it, and managed to complete my degree. And after during the degree, you had to go and get a placement with an environmental organisation. So I chose to do my placement at a country park, and that was really interesting. So it was a voluntary position alongside my degree, and that was kind of my first taster about conservation and what kind of jobs are there in conservation. So that sparked my interest. I then went on to gain lots of volunteer experience in Sheffield by volunteering with lots of different organisations. So I volunteered with Sheffield Wildlife Trust, Yorkshire Wildlife Trust. I then became involved with a local bird ringing group where I learned about bird ringing, and that also tied in with the conservation, because you have to be very conservation aware if you're doing bird ringing and if you're going to do it safely. So there was all sorts of things like that, and I dipped in and out of things, became a hedge layer for an apprentice hedge layer for 3 seasons, which, you know, it was really informative and just carried on sparking my interest in this area of work. So then I got the opportunity to move to North Wales in 2014. And after a few various jobs here in North Wales, I was very lucky to land my role with North Wales Wildlife Trust in September 2018. Really love being in the mountains, really love this part of North Wales. You know, we're very, very lucky to live in this wonderful place, and we've got mountains just really easy to get to. So I really enjoy spending time out in nature, and particularly in mountains. I just think it's an amazing landscape. It sparks so many passions within me, and I love to see, you go up a mountain and you see lots of different nature, and you think, how is it surviving on this barren landscape high up on a mountain? So it just, I just love it, and I go out to the mountains in Snowdonia whenever I can, really. I'm also quite creative. I love to make things, and like Mark's already mentioned, I love to use natural materials in my crafting, so I'll mention that a little bit further on in the talk, and happy to answer questions about that at the end as well. So what are invasive non-native species? Basically, invasive non-native species, which are often referred to as INS, and you'll quite often hear us refer to them as INS, are basically plants or animals which have been introduced by people, often as garden ornamentals or as food, but also they can accidentally be transported on boats or shipping containers and things like that, and they are outside of their natural area. So we've got a few main species that we concentrate on here at North Wales Wildlife Trust, and one of those is the American signal crayfish here. So I'll mention those a little bit. And then we've got Japanese knotweed. Probably a lot of you are familiar with that because it's obviously it's quite a bad one. We've got giant hogweed. We've got Himalayan balsam, which is a massive problem all across North Wales, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, if not all of you. And then we've got American skunk cabbage. So these are kind of the main ones that we deal with here with our INS project at North Wales Wildlife Trust. So if the conditions are right for these plants and animals, they can spread quite easily, and that results in a lot of damage to the environment, to the economy, and even our health as well. So things like giant hogweed can cause burns on the skin, and that is quite important to be aware of that and to manage that. Okay, so what are we doing here at North Wales Wildlife Trust about invasive non-native species? So in 2012, we developed, not myself, unfortunately, but North Wales Wildlife Trust developed a project called the De-Invasive Non-Native Species Project, and that's often referred to as the DINS project. That's kind of our overall name of our INS projects here at the Wildlife Trust. And there's a map here that shows the areas we covered with the De-INS project, because it was basically all of the River Dee and all of the Dee tributaries, so any river or stream flowing into the Dee was covered under this project. And we received the funding for this project in 2013. And previous to this, a lot of the invasive work that was carried out was being carried out by angling clubs. And that was mostly because it was to do with where they were angling. So they needed to be aware of these invasives, especially things like Himalayan balsam and probably giant hogweed as well, because they will really affect where you can angle from. There's certain places of the river you can't get to if there's an invasive species there. So angling clubs were actively out there and managing it, as well as other organisations, including Snowdonia National Park Authority and the Allan Valley Himalayan Balsam Project. However, these weren't coordinated on a catchment scale, which is really important. So the DINS project was developed to be coordinated on a catchment scale, which meant it starts at the source of the river and works downstream, because there's not a lot of point in acting fragmented, because you're still, if you're dealing with a patch of Himalayan balsam and there's another patch further upstream, you're just going to keep getting reinfestation. The seeds, the plants, they're all going to float downstream and eventually they'll take hold. So it's really, really important to manage invasive species from a catchment scale and start at the top of the source. So due to funding, obviously funding for invasive species, it's not long term, it's very short term funding, and we're always having to apply for new funding. It's very frustrating. We're not always guaranteed it, and it's very hard work to try and get that funding. So in 2018, we were given a new round of funding, and the DINS project had to become the Our River Wellbeing Project, which was also known as ORW Project. And that's when I was lucky enough to land the role as the Our River Wellbeing River Guardian Officer for this project. So this project was focused on the improvement of the health and wellbeing of the volunteer river guardians, whilst they were also improving the health and wellbeing of the decatchment through control and removal of invasive non-native species and preventing the spread of the INS with good biosecurity practices. This project was part of our Living Landscape strategy. So my first task as the River Wellbeing Officer was to develop a River Guardian network full of volunteers. So I set about creating that. That was kind of my first task. To go alongside this network of volunteers, I wanted to offer them some training. So I developed a training program of land-based skills, which included things like brush cutter use and strimmer training, because we wanted volunteers to come out and help us to strim the balsam in particular, and areas of land to get to the invasive species. So that was a vital skill to give to our volunteers to make sure they could come and help us with those kind of activities. First aid is always very important to make sure your workforce has got first aid qualifications. That was an important one. And then again, pesticide training for anybody that wanted to do that as well, because as I'll mention in a bit, but unfortunately we do have to use pesticides as a way of treating some of these invasive species. It's the only way that's effective for treating them, unfortunately. So that was the training program based on land-based skills that I developed. But because this was a wellbeing project for wellbeing of the river and wellbeing of the volunteers, I developed a program of wellbeing activities to go alongside that. So this included things like mindfulness, bushcraft and green woodworking. So to do the mindfulness and bushcraft, we were given funding, we were given the funding for the project, and this included being able to contract in experts in mindfulness and bushcraft. So I was able to offer that as a regular thing for my volunteers. And the green woodworking is something that I myself am quite knowledgeable on, and I've learned a lot of green woodworking from being a volunteer myself, particularly when I was in Sheffield. I had a regular volunteer session with some green woodworking volunteers who taught me an enormous amount, and this was really beneficial to my well-being, and so I was really keen to add this into my programme to offer it to other people, because it's a really nice activity, it's very good for well-being, but it's also obviously nature focused, and it's all around conservation. So I was very keen to get that in, and I was very lucky that I was able to put that in my programme as well. So along with my volunteer river guardians, we conducted lots of surveys. So we went out into the decatchment and we surveyed areas of river, surveyed for invasives and just nature in general while we were out there. Again, it's a very nice activity to do. So we also carried out INS control or INS management. So like I say, with brush cutters and pesticides. This also included lots of balsam bashers, because the best way to control Himalayan balsam is by hand. But I'll talk about that again a little bit more in detail. So from when I started, to be able to get my volunteer river guardian network up and running, I offered weekly volunteer sessions throughout the year. So originally the plan was kind of to run these volunteer sessions whilst it was invasive species season and get people out there treating the invasive species. But that's kind of a summer activity, summer and autumn. And then when it comes to winter, we don't really do a lot with the invasive species. So it was a case of trying to find activities to keep people engaged and to keep the volunteer network strong going throughout the whole year, and not just, you know, saying, come on, we'll do it while the season's there, and then leaving them high and dry. So this was where the Wellbeing really came into play, and I was able to run these sessions throughout the winter, where I concentrated on wellbeing, and a lot of the green woodworking and mindfulness and bushcraft happened over winter, and that was really good and lots of fun, really enjoyable, and I'm still doing that now, and it's just my favorite part of the job, really. So we worked a lot with other organisations. So I got involved with other organisations such as the various councils. So we did a lot of work around Wrexham. So we worked a lot with Wrexham Council, Flintshire and Denbighshire councils as well. The Himalayan, Allen Valley Himalayan Balsam Project. We did a lot of work with those. And any organisation that wanted to link up with us, basically. So it wasn't all just about the invasives. We linked up with other mental health charities such as Mind and Avow, which is Wrexham's volunteer organisation, and just basically linked up with as many different organisations as we could, and just to get the message across. So we also had lots of community engagement. That meant going to lots of events and running events of our own. So I put on lots of balsam bashes throughout the year up until the pandemic, which obviously put a bit of a spanner in the works and caused a lot of complications and a lot of problems, slowed the project down a lot. But luckily, because it was outdoor work, I was still able to carry on throughout the pandemic and still carry on, you know, doing balsam bashes and things like that. So yeah, a lot of community engagement, which is really nice. I really enjoy getting out into local communities and working with people and just spreading the word really about invasive species and how to stop the spread. So my volunteer river guardians, the network started to form, and it's evolved throughout the course of the project, which has been really lovely. And I've had lots of different volunteers come and go throughout the time that I've been there. And for my weekly sessions, I like to make it quite varied. So I give them lots of different activities to do. So apologies to anybody who's got quite a small screen that they're looking at. Hopefully you can see the pictures. So this is just a little example of some of the activities that I've put on, that I still put on for my volunteers weekly. So we do things like river dipping. So obviously river dipping might sound like we're getting in and having a dip, we're going for a swim. It's not. It's usually where we go into a river in either wellies or waders, and we take nets and we take trays and we sample the river. So there's various things you can do. So we do river kick sampling, which is taking the net into the river. You kick up the bottom of the riverbed, sorry, and this makes things go into the net. You can then put them in the tray, have a look at what you've got. You can see if you've got any invasive things like, I mean, there's so many invasive non-native species out there. So you might get things like invasive shrimp. So we've got killer shrimp in some of the rivers, which is invasive, and it looks very similar to our native freshwater shrimp. So putting them in a tray and having a look is a good way of examining that part of the river and seeing if there are any invasives in there, and if so, what we've got. So you can get invasive leeches or insects and various river invertebrates and things. But we also have the possibility of finding the crayfish when we're doing a river kick sample as well. So these are all really important things to do, and it gives you a really good indication of how healthy that part of the river is. You're in the water, you're having a look at it, you're seeing what's in there, what's around, but you're also looking at the riverbanks. You can see if there's any invasive plants growing. You can see if there's any damage to the riverbanks from things like crayfish. And it's a really good way of just getting in and really having a look at that section of the river. And it's really great fun for the volunteers to come in and be part of that. Like, you know, a lot of volunteers they won't have done this as an adult. They might have done it as a child. They might have gone pond dipping, or they might have done it with their own children or their grandchildren. But adults quite often don't actually get the chance to do these things themselves. So I wanted to make my activities really fun and engaging, and give people the chance to do these things themselves and have a go. So people get in and have a go at the river dipping. We like to do some litter picking alongside the river dipping. So we've usually got one or two doing a litter pick while the others are in the river, or you can chop and change and take turns. But the picture here of the litter pick was another example of working with one of the other groups that are in the community where we work. So we do a lot of stuff in Wrexham, and there's a fantastic group of litter pickers in Wrexham called the Wrexham Litter Picking Group. And it was set up by one woman just before the pandemic, I think it was. And she's done a fantastic job of encouraging people to go out and pick litter in their community. And now that group has grown and it's really big, and they do an amazing job. They do a really fantastic job of going out and clearing the litter in Wrexham. And they approached us and said, did we want to do a river clean with them? And I was like, yeah, this would be great. This would be really good. And so while we were doing the litter pick along the river, we were cleaning the river out, I was able to then point out Himalayan balsam on the bank and Japanese knotweed. And a lot of the litter pickers weren't familiar with these plants, hadn't heard of them before, didn't know the damage. And now they know what to look out for, and they'll come and tell us if they see it. And you know, they actively now go along and pull up the Himalayan balsam whilst they're litter picking as well. So it's really great. It's a really great thing to be able to go out and join a group like that, and then give them a little bit of something extra to do as well. So that's really nice. So as I've mentioned, we do balsam bashes, because the most effective way of managing Himalayan balsam is hand pulling. I'm sure a lot of you have probably been out and done some hand pulling of Himalayan balsam yourselves. It's a really fun activity. It's something that anybody can get involved with. You find Himalayan balsam growing in a lot of areas, so it's quite easily accessible by a lot of people. And it's something, because Himalayan balsam itself is safe, it's safe to handle, it doesn't burn you, it doesn't irritate people. It's really safe, and you can just pull it up. The best way to get rid of the plant is to hand pull it. So it makes for a really good volunteer activity or a community event. So we did quite a few of those through the duration of the project. We would go out into various communities and teach people about Himalayan balsam, and then just have a really good time pulling it all up. Then you pile it all up, and then you just bounce all over it. So this photo here is one of my volunteers, Pav. She has an amazing time. She loves it when it's balsam season. She comes out, we pull the balsam, we pile it up, and she bounces all over it and just crushes it. And it's like being on a trampoline, but in nature. It's amazing. It's great. So we also do, as I've mentioned before, we do trim the Himalayan balsam if we need to. If it's a really big area, takes a long time and a lot of people to pull it, so sometimes it makes more sense to just trim it. It's not as effective, but it's better than not doing anything, and it means you can cover more ground. But what I wanted to do was get back to a lot more of the traditional skills and introduce people to traditional skills. So I employed a scythe instructor for the day, and we bought some scythes for the trust. And we went out to a place in Wrexham, and we were taught how to scythe the Himalayan balsam. And this was lovely, because it's a lot more sociable than going out with a strimmer. It's a really friendly activity. Obviously, you've still got to keep your distance because you've got a sharp scythe in your hands, but it's a really nice activity because you can still chat when you're scything. If you're strimming, it's noisy, you've got your ear defenders on, and you can't hear people. It's very antisocial, and I myself don't particularly enjoy strimming, if I'm honest. It's a bit of a lonely activity, but scything, it's really nice. So people got out there and they had a go, and it was really good fun, and it was actually quite effective at cutting through the Himalayan balsam. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Himalayan balsam, when you go out, if you scythe it, it makes popping noises as you go through it. So it's quite fun to do. And I'm always keen to put a fun element into the sessions wherever I can. I find if it's fun, it's much more engaging. So we went out and we did the scything, and it was lovely. It was a wonderful activity, and we cleared a massive area just in that day. And it's also it's about getting together with other people and doing that. But then you have a break for lunch and you sit down outside, and you're chatting with other people. You get to know their stories. And it's just a really wonderful way of bringing people together whilst doing good for the environment and managing these invasive species. So it's a really lovely activity. So I've got a photo here of green woodworking. So I've got a lovely little green sort of bushcraft woodworking area at our Aberdeener Nature Reserve. So if you're ever over at Aberdeener, it's hidden away because it's top secret, because we don't want the site being abused. But at the start of the project, I was really lucky that we had this little area of woodland at Aberdeener that we'd cleared for an event. So it was already a site for a fire, and it was already cleared. And I kind of then said, can I have this area for my wellbeing sessions? Because I wanted somewhere to take the volunteers over winter so that we could carry on with our activities, and have it as a place where the volunteers could make it their own. So I've been really, really lucky, really, really fortunate that I've been able to have this area, this space at Aberdeener. And we go more or less every Tuesday over winter. And we have various activities there. So we've got a shelter up, as hopefully you can see in the photos. We've put up an ex-army parachute, and I teach the volunteers a lot of green woodworking skills there. So lots of traditional skills. So we do hand coppicing, coppicing with saws. I've got a hazel woodland there, so it's really nice for coppicing. And we have a permanent fire bed, so we can have a fire. When I first set up the group, it was very basic. It was just a fire on the ground and a couple of logs to sit on. But the volunteers have helped me make this space what it is now, and it's fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. It's we've got woodland benches, rustic natural log benches out there. We've got a permanent fire bed. We've got the shelter that's up all the time. And we've got a little wood store where we cut and store wood so that we've always got dry wood to have a fire. And we gather there and we do lots of different activities. So I teach the volunteers to do things like when they've coppiced the hazel, we bring it back to the camp, and then I teach them how to split it naturally with hand tools. So they make their own mallet, and then they use this to split the wood in half. And then we can use that, we can carve spoons from it, or we can do some wood whittling. Last week we had a go at making charcoal pencils on the fire. So we got some tins and we tried various pieces of wood in the tins, put them on the fire, made some charcoal, and had a go at drawing with it. And it's just such a lovely activity to do. So that now is our little space. It's our Volunteer River Guardian camp, if you like. And it's just a really wonderful space because we treat the space with respect, and we look after it and we value it, and it gives us a lot in return. We've seen so much wildlife while we've been there. The wildlife it's just brilliant. You can be sat around having a cuppa around the fire, having a chat, and a bank vole will just come and have a wander through the camp, and you get to see it. We've always got robins coming down to say hello to us. We've got blue tits, great tits, we've got wrens, blackbirds, all sorts of things. And we've got a pond as well, so we can do pond dipping while we're there. And it's just really lovely. It's just a really lovely space. And it's just a really nice area where people can go and get together. So that ties into our woodland wellbeing. I don't know if you can see in the photo here, but there's quite a few people sat around here. So we have celebrations throughout the year. we tend to have a Christmas celebration, so we'll get together and people can play music if they want to. We'll have things like mulled apple juice on the fire, and it's just really lovely. It's really nice. So as you can probably hear in my voice, the well-being side of the project is it's my favourite part. I love it. I really enjoy it. So back onto invasive species, we also do crayfish surveying. So I take the volunteers out and tell them how to survey for crayfish and what to do if we find them. So we did go out to a river where there were crayfish. They were the American non-native signal crayfish, and we had some educational sessions there where I taught people how to identify them and how to measure them and record them and things like that. Okay, so INS projects for 2022. So as I mentioned already, funding is always a bit of an issue. So we had our new round of funding start in March this year, or well, April this year. The old funding ended in March. New funding started in April. And we started the NRAP project. It's very long title. You say I'm part of the NRAP project, it doesn't really mean much to anybody, but it's basically the North Wales Resilient Ecosystem Pilot Project. And this project covers Conwy, Denbighshire, Flintshire, Gwynedd and Wrexham. And it's all about raising awareness of and tackling invasive non-native species, such as the Himalayan balsam and the Japanese knotweed, but a few others as well that I'll mention. And this is through 4 pilot projects. So the first pilot project, or one of the pilot projects, is our Action for Angling part of the project. So this is where we're trying to engage with angling clubs across North Wales. We are currently working with North Wales Rivers Trust, and they are helping us to reach out to anglers in the east of North Wales. Not in the east, sorry, in the west. So they're covering Anglesey and Gwynedd, and going down to places like Aberystwyth and covering that side, and Carnarvon and places. But we've also been working with the Canal and Rivers Trust, and we attended one of their Let's Fish events, just so we could talk to people more and raise more awareness of anglers and how to be aware of invasive non-native species and how to try and prevent the spread. So that's really a really interesting part of the project. So another one that we're currently trialling is conservation grazing. So we've got a photo here of an area of land that's got a lot of Himalayan balsam on it, absolutely covered. So we fenced off an area and we brought in some Hebridean sheep. They're quite hardy little creatures and really keen to just eat anything. And as you can see, they just munched straight through the Himalayan balsam and cleared that whole area in no time. And it was really effective. And what you can do then is, if they've missed any plants, you can then go in with volunteers and just pull out the few plants that they've missed. So they do a combination of eating the plants, but also trampling on them and squashing them with their hooves. So we found that that's quite an effective way of doing it. Obviously, it has its tricky element where you can't always fence them in, or there's areas of land with Himalayan balsam on that you might not be able to put animals on. So that's all part of this pilot project, and we're just trying to see what does work and what doesn't work. The other thing we're trying to develop is a biosecurity citizens army. So one of the best ways of preventing the spread of invasive non-native species is by performing good biosecurity. So biosecurity, it's a bit of a fancy name. Doesn't really mean a lot to a lot of people. When you say, oh, you've got to perform biosecurity, they're like, I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? Basically, all it is cleaning your equipment or your footwear or your animals, and reducing the spread of invasive species to another place. Invasive species spread very easily by seed, by pathogens, by fragments of plant. So things like the Himalayan balsam, you have probably come across it when it's in seed, and the seeds are very explosive. you only have to brush past the seed pods and they will explode everywhere. And it's very, very easy to then get the seeds stuck in the sole of your shoe. Or if you are angling, it's very easy to get it caught in your equipment. So what we're trying to do is get people aware that all they have to do is make sure they clean their equipment or clean their feet, clean their shoes. So we've developed some little packs. Some of you might have got some of our packs. We tend to give them out a lot at events. And I know I've probably met a few of you along the way. And we have these packs that we give out to people that are active out in the countryside, just to say, you know, use these and please just clean your boots. And they've got things like a little brush and a little pick in them, so you can pick the soles of your shoes and try and scrape out any seeds that you might have picked up while you're out walking. People just don't think about it. It's not something that people are immediately aware of, that you could pick up a fragment of a plant and accidentally take it in your boot to another site. Or a lot of anglers, there's a little plant called Crashula helmsley or New Zealand pygmy-weed, and it can spread by a very, very, very small fraction of the plant. Just a little leaf of the plant can spread, and it spreads very easily, but it's very, very hard to get rid of. So it's much easier to say to people, try and prevent the spread rather than dealing with the invasive once it's there. So that's what we're trying to get across. And so we go to lots of different events. I've got some examples here of, there's a walking event that takes place every year in a place called Conwy, and the Conwy Walking Festival it's called, and they get people to come and they go out for walks. And so when they come back to the start of the walk, which is at the sports centre in Conwy, we set up a biosecurity station basically, and all it is a boot washing station where people can come back, wash the boots and make sure they don't take any invasives away with them. So this is a really nice event. When I went to it a couple of years ago, the organisers had some children there, and that's what's in these photographs here. The children that were with the organisers of the event were absolutely lovely, absolutely adorable, and they were very keen to come over and help me with this biosecurity, because it was a lot of fun. Basically, cleaning people's boots with a pressure spray, pressure wash, is a lot of fun when you're between the ages of 3 and 8, it seems. So they were very keen, and it was amazing because I was teaching the children about invasive species and how to stop the spread, and then they were just actively jumping on people when they got off the bus and saying, come and wash your boots, come here, wash your boots, I'll wash your boots for you. And they were then actually washing people's boots for them. And it was just wonderful. It was such a fantastic little event, and it helped spread the word, but I think it made it more memorable to a lot of the participants because these children were so actively involved. So it felt like a really positive event, and I'm sure a lot of people will have gone away and actually thought more about it because of that. And that's what a lot of it's about. It's about getting into the community and, you know, just chatting to people and getting people aware of these things and talking about it. So we also go to other events, like the one in the picture at the bottom is it's an event at Nottingham Water Sports Centre, and they pay North Wales Wildlife Trust to go over and provide biosecurity stations at their event, where they have lots of people from all over the world come and race on canoes and kayaks and stand-up paddleboards, and they get them to come to us. They come to us on the Saturday usually, and we talk to them about invasives and what invasives are. And then when they do the races on the Sunday, they are told to come to us at the end of the race, and we wash down their boats, hose them down with very high-powered jet washers. And this helps to prevent any fragments of plants or any pathogens and things from spreading on the boats. And that's, again, it's a really good way of getting out and getting the message across. So the other one of the other pilot projects we're doing at the moment is eDNA horizon scanning. That is basically environmental DNA, and it's we are sent a kit with all the kit in it, where we then will take volunteers out to sections of the river. Because if you're wanting to, say you're wanting to look for invasive species such as American signal crayfish and Chinese mitten crabs, if you were to go out and hand survey all of the rivers in North Wales, you'd be there forever. It would take a lifetime just to survey them, let alone do anything with those results. So we're trying to find more effective, more less time consuming and less people time consuming ways of getting out and finding these results, because we want to know where these invasive species are in our rivers. So we're trialing this eDNA because things like American signal crayfish, or native crayfish as well, and the mitten crabs, they shed their DNA into the water, and it can actually stay in the water for quite a long time. So we've got this plan to go out and sample the water. You then put the samples through filters. So we did it a couple of years ago, and we had to go out collecting the water samples by hand. So I dragged my lovely mum out, and we were taking samples from bridges, as you can see in one of the photos here. And then we had to feed these water samples through filters, as you can see in the photo in the middle of me having to put it through these filters, which is really hard work, really tough on the wrists, quite challenging, but good fun as well. So we did that, and we got some results back, and we got some mixed results. So we wanted to try it again as part of this new project, but we wanted to put a lot more effort into it and really focus on it and really find out what we needed to do. So we wanted to find out what was the fewest samples we could get where we could get good results. But that meant we had to take lots and lots of samples and do lots of different things with them. So we had to pull some samples together. We had to filter some on their own. We had to put samples from other rivers together, and then filter them all. So we've got my fantastic volunteers came together at Aberdeen, and they helped us to collect the samples, and then they helped us to filter them and write down all the results. And basically you filter them through, and then you send the filters off to the laboratory, and the laboratory tests the DNA. The DNA is captured within those filters. So we've got hand filtering, like I'm doing in the picture in the middle, where I'm stood up pushing it by hand through a syringe through a filter. But then on the other photo, we have this photo up here. We have what's called a vampire sampler, and that's a much quicker way. It's basically like a hand drill that feeds the water through a pipe and through a much bigger filter, so we can sample much bigger bags full of water at a much quicker rate. So we're sampling that, we're trialing that as well. And it's an amazing thing to do, because you get to go out to some fantastic locations. You get to go out to remote bridges and take samples somewhere you might never have been before, and you wouldn't have any other reason to go there normally, but you go there and you take samples. So it's a really fun activity, quite full on, quite time consuming still, but hopefully the results we get will give us an indication of where the invasives are and what's the best way of using this method productively and as effectively as possible, which is what we want. So we also have our Warren project, which is the Wales Resilient Ecological Network, and we also have a North Wales Cotoneaster control project. And I'm not going to talk about those tonight because they're not really my area. And if you want any more information about them, there is information on our website. We've got a page specifically for those projects, and it's got contact details for the project officers that are working on those projects. So if you want to know anything else about those, have a look on our website and then just get in touch with the relevant people, or you can get in touch with me and I can signpost you their way. So what have we achieved so far at North Wales Wildlife Trust? We have managed more than 100 kilometres of riverbank throughout the duration of this project. The main species we've managed have been Himalayan balsam, giant hogweed, Japanese knotweed and American skunk cabbage. But we've also been able to give out advice on orange balsam, which is very similar to Himalayan balsam, and a lot of people aren't familiar with it. It's not as widespread, but it's still a very problematic invasive. So we've done investigative work on signal crayfish and mitten crab, and we're still doing that now with the eDNA sampling. We're still out there physically looking. If anybody reports a sighting, we will go out to where they say they've seen them and physically have a look. We might put traps out and you know, see if we can find these invasives, develop a plan of action depending on how big the problem is there in that area, and if there's any damage being caused, that sort of thing. So we've worked with hundreds of volunteers and stakeholders. And what have we learned so far? So we've learned that a top-down approach is vital. It's a must. And we've also learned that partnership approach is very important. So partnership working, you can't just go out and tackle these things on your own. It's really important to get other organisations, other partners on board with it, work together as a team, and really, you know, tackle it from a catchment level. So you start at the source with these partners and you work down through the catchment, and that is by far the most effective way to do it. So we've also learned that long-term funding is vital, but absent, unfortunately, and it's a constant stress. It's a constant battle trying to get this funding and to get the funders to realise that we need this funding full-term, long-term, because you spend a lot of time and effort managing an area for invasives, and then if the funding stops and your work stops, then the invasives are going to come back, and it's very, very frustrating. But yeah, unfortunately, it's something we have very little control over. We've also learned that volunteer workforce is invaluable. We couldn't do a lot of what we do without the help of volunteers. They are amazing and so much appreciated. I know some of you here tonight probably actively go out there and help pull the balsam, and we're really appreciative of that, because we just couldn't do it without you all. You know, there's not enough of us. There's not enough of us when we have got volunteers, so there certainly aren't enough of us without us. So we really do appreciate the work that the volunteers do to help us with this project. Last but not least, thank you for listening. I hope that's been educational. I'll stop sharing now.
What am I surprised there? Yeah, all right. I was listening. Thank you. That's really very, 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 yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Helen. I've written down. I've made a few notes here. Not all questions really. I was really quite impressed with your range of skills, really. You know, it's kind of not it's like an all-round kind of like job, really, much more than just what you might think tackling invasive species is all about. It's tackling invasive species and working with people in a very positive way. I like your idea of scything. I'm a scyther too. I love scything and green woodworking too. Yeah, do you ever get involved with the Woodland Skills Centre in Bodfari?
Yes, we do. I have quite a lot to do with them there. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, I could see the elements of what you do is what he does there, isn't it? What he has done anyway.
Yeah, I've actually arranged sessions there for my volunteers before, and we've gone over and Rod's taken us out into the woodland and done coppicing and then made crafts out of that. So yeah, it's we're very, very much linked to what they do, and they're very aware of what we do as well.
That's good. If anybody's got a question, I've got a few things I could ask myself, but if anybody got a question, if they want to kind of either put their hand up and I'll put the video on and ask it. There's a few comments in the chat which I can refer to, but if Jill's going to watch out for any of those, I'll just while Jill's scanning the.
Rihanna's actually got her hand up now.
All right, yeah. Rihanna's there. Rihanna, if you want to put yourself on.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
There you go.
Yeah, you have been WhatsApping me, you know, Paul's given me your number, so I have been to Mice Having before, but also as well, you know, the Woodland Skills Centre you mentioned.
Yeah.
I've also done some like hazel work there as well.
Yeah.
And then with Mind, I've done a lot of mindfulness and things like that, really. So that was quite interesting. Then also, you know, some of the species you mentioned as well was, you know, I've learned something new. So
Oh, excellent.
yeah.
Hopefully you'll be able to find time to come out with us at some point.
Yeah, I will do. I mean, I've been up there before, but I just do a lot with Mind, and it's just getting the time, but I will come up. Yeah,
we used to do quite a lot of stuff with Mind, so that it could tie in with people like yourself. So people that were already going out with Mind regularly, we would link up and do sessions together. But since the pandemic, it's been a lot harder to do that. So it's that kind of hasn't happened as much lately. But hopefully we'll still sort of dip in and out of Mind activities and things like that as well. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rihanna. Is that okay? Thank you. I don't think anybody's got a hand up yet. There's someone here, Chris. I know Chris wants to speak on camera. He said he's got some giant hogweed in Pennyforth this year.
Ah.
Are you aware of that at all?
I don't think so. Is Chris able to send us maybe details of the location?
Hi. Sorry, can you hear me?
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I reported it through to the council, so it was disposed of, but it was just underneath the railway bridge by the station. I just noticed it. Was driving past and thought, oh, hang on, that's giant over there.
Oh, that's really good that you've mentioned it and that you've reported it. So did you say that the council have eradicated it?
Yeah, it was sprayed.
I was just going to ask if you know what method they use. We've actually, as part of this pilot project, we've actually got a new piece of equipment called a root wave, and it's specifically for treating things like giant hogweed, where we go along and it electrocutes the plant. It basically cooks the plant down to the root. So we're hoping that will be a more effective way of dealing with it than just spraying it, because I've noticed in a lot of areas where it is sprayed, it does come back the next year. So
I'll keep an eye out anyway.
Yeah, have a look if you get a chance to have a look if it does come back next year. And if you want to report it to us, then we'll happily take that report and see if we can maybe come in. We do a lot of work with the council, so my colleague might be aware of it. My colleague Gemma Rose tends to do a lot more of the hands-on out there managing the invasives and dealing with contractors, so she might be more aware of it than I am, because I tend to mine's a lot more the people side of the project. Yeah,
I did try to put it through on one of the apps, but I can't remember what it's called now, but I do find that it's doesn't seem to be very user friendly, or not for me anyway. There seems to be a problem with it, so
yeah, they're not always the easiest to use, are they?
I think I did flag it to the county botanist though, or the recorder.
Okay. Yeah, anything like that. I mean, you can always email us as well with a photo and a location. All our email contacts should be on our INS page on our North Wales Wildlife Trust website. There's usually contact details on there. So it's fine. You don't have to contact us if you've obviously contacted the council about it. But if you do want to contact us about, even if you've got something that you're not sure on an ID of, you can contact us and send us a picture, and we can usually help to ID things as well.
Oops.
Is there much giant hogweed around in North Wales? There's not something I've come across, to be honest.
Yeah, there's kind of pockets of it. So we're still trying to find out where the main areas are, where it is. We do get reports of the odd one here and there, but quite often when we get a report, there's kind of a lot of it in one area and then not elsewhere. So there's probably more than you realise, but we're still trying to find areas where it is.
Okay. Thanks, Chris, for that. That's good.
Yeah, Sorry, there's bits on the Wirral, I think. So the thought was that maybe it had been transported along the railway network.
Yeah, it's quite possible. That railways are one of the biggest spreaders of invasive species. Sadly, I mean, Himalayan balsam, the seeds just get carried with the trains, and it's the same with the giant hogweed, because again, the seeds just go with the trains. So yeah, it's quite common.
They spread everything, don't they? Well, a lot of wildflowers are spread. That aren't invasive, non-native, non-native, just anything, but it happens. Not very nice, are they, giant hogweed? No.
No, it's very dangerous. It's very, very nasty, causes very nasty burns, and you don't want to get it near you. Yeah.
That's good. Thanks, Ruth. Lee Kennedy, you mentioned
he's there.
Signal crayfish. Were a problem used in a lake that you used. You there, Lee?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good 10, 12 years ago, and I was fishing a lake up near Melodon, and yeah, it was a big problem back then. I think they've sorted it now, but I haven't fished there for a long time because of it. And it was catch a fish, catch a crayfish.
Yeah.
It was like that.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah,
and every time we caught them, we just told the fishery owner, and he'd come and deal with them.
Was he popping them on his barbecue?
I don't know what he was doing with them. I don't think they survived very long.
No.
No, they are quite a size as well.
Yeah, they grow. If the conditions are right, like, so in say a fishing lake, the crayfish can grow really quite big, because they're getting regular food, and there's not a lot of competition for them, and there's a lot of space, so they will get really, really big. And it was not far from there where we found American signal crayfish earlier this year, where I took my volunteers to teach them about crayfish. It was Avon-Agarth. Not far from there, and yeah, there's a little quite a big population in a small bit of river there, and they're only small. The crayfish there are only quite small because it's quite a shallow bit of river, but I didn't know whether they were coming from the fishing lake further up the river.
Quite possible.
Yeah.
It's quite possible, and that's the only lake I've ever fished that's had them.
Oh really? Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. But the problem is with this as well is with them being in fishing lakes, is a lot of people don't realise that they carry a thing called crayfish plague, and it can be transported. The plague can survive on a net, on a fishing net, or a pole or something for quite a long time, even out of water. So if they then go and fish another lake or another river with the same piece of equipment, they might spread the plague, and if there's any native crayfish there, they will wipe them out. Yeah, it's really bad for them.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to go back and have a look in that lake.
Yeah, I'll have to. I'll have to pop over there, have a look.
Yeah, let us know if you do, and see if they are there. Yeah. At the moment, all we're doing with the crayfish is we kind of finding out where they are and making notes of where they are, and if we find out that they are a major problem here in North Wales, then we'll put a plan of action in place. But at the moment, it's basically just we're seeing where they are and how big the populations are. We're not really doing anything else with them at the moment.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you. I suppose if they're in a lake, they're just an isolated community, aren't they? I guess is that how you view them?
It depends. It depends whether that lake's close to a river or anything, because the crayfish have the ability to walk across land, so they can easily walk across a football pitch. It's nothing to them. So
well, there you go. Big, yeah. and like you say, they are noted to be quite big and tasty and meaty, aren't they?
Yeah.
You're starting to think they could breed them and kind of for food, really, do you? No. This is why we don't encourage people to eat them, because a lot of people always say to us, well, why don't we just eat them? They make for good eating, and yeah, they do, but we don't want to encourage people to eat them, because they will then become fond of them and want to put them in their local rivers and their local lakes. So we're trying to avoid that if we can. So, yeah. Fair enough. Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Lee. That's good. That's
Okay.
interesting. Thank you. Thanks very much. Chris is here again. He's asking about mitten crabs in the D. Do you want to come on, Chris, or I'll ask you? What's happening about the mitten crabs in the D?
So we're still trying to find out where exactly in the D. We know they're in. We know they're in the Cheshire Weir, or Chester Weir, whatever it's called. We know they're in there, and we're still surveying. We're still basically doing the survey. So we've taken lots of samples from the River Dee and put them through for the eDNA sampling, and we're still waiting. We're hoping to get the results, some of the first results, back in January, and that will sort of give us a better idea where the mitten crabs are, and then we can sort of start to figure out what we're going to do about them, and
Right.
and where we
They're
need to focus
actually
efforts.
there's an intake for United Utilities, Huntington Treatment Works, just by the road bridge that goes over the Dee, the A55 M53. They've
Yes.
been reported there in the intake building. So they're
Oh,
definitely
right.
in that location.
Wow.
Not seen them myself, but
Yeah, they can grow quite big. We did catch one in the weir, and it was very tiny. It was really small, but you could still see that it was a mitten crab. And obviously, if any crabs are in the fresh water, they are only mitten crabs, because mitten crabs are the only freshwater crab. But we have actually taken some samples from near that area in the Dee, so hopefully that'll come back on. That'll come back in the results from the eDNA. It'll be interesting to see.
Okay, that's good. There's a few good comments here. One inspiring and interesting talk from Dave. Rui, very educational to me. Oh, there's a question here from Alex. What do you do with the dispatched crayfish?
I thought we might get that question.
Not eat them.
We didn't eat them.
No.
I've got an example here on my shelf of this was about the biggest size of the ones that we were catching in the river that we found. So basically, we had to get permission from Natural Resources Wales to trap them, and so we got permission to do a survey over a month, and we caught 140 crayfish in this one area within that month, and unfortunately we did have to dispatch all of the ones that we caught, because by law you can't put them back once you've taken them out of the water, and we had to take them out to measure them and examine them and whatnot. So we humanely dispatched them at the side of the river, and that basically involves stabbing them through the head, which is not nice. It's horrible, and it's not an enjoyable activity, but unfortunately that was what we had to do. And then we just discard the carcasses once they're humanely killed. So yeah, it's not something we enjoy doing, and it's we only did it as we wanted to see how big the population was there in that river, but I really wanted to use it as an educational activity for the volunteers. So that was the main reason we did it. We don't generally go in and start taking them out the river, because we know we would have to dispatch them, and it's not something we want to do.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the question, Alex. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's very different dispatching a crayfish to pulling a Himalayan balsam, isn't it?
Yeah, I much prefer pulling Himalayan balsam.
You don't feel as though you're kind of hurting anything particularly,
No, because it's just full of water, that, isn't it? You just throw it on the ground, it rots away. But yes,
plants and but it maybe but we're not going to that.
And as an animal lover as well, I mean, I care about animals and wildlife, and the last thing I want to be doing is killing them. So that's the negative side of working with invasive species. But we know we have to, because they do spread disease and they do kill off our native species. And even in this section of river where we were finding them, the damage they were doing, there were footpaths over certain sections that were just eroding away and falling into the river. So they that causes problems obviously on the paths on the river banks, but it also causes problems in the river itself, because it causes the riverbed to become very silted up. So they create a lot of silt in the riverbed, and this means when the fish come out and they start spawning, they can't spawn. They're not able to spawn successfully because there's too much silt, and they can't fertilize their eggs, and they can't breed properly. So it causes a lot of damage, and people don't really realize and appreciate that. So unfortunately, we do have to deal with them and you know, dispatch them, unfortunately.
Yeah, just a thought, really. Where you clear Himalayan balsam or knotweed or whatever, do you ever go back to where you cleared it to see how the area's recovered?
Yes, yeah.
Basically they stop other plants growing, don't they? That's why they're not
They
good.
do.
So
They do.
You see the recovery sometimes of.
Yeah, we do. We've been working on a section of the River Allen in Mould, because a lot of my volunteers come from that area. So concentrate a lot of my efforts on the River Allen in Mould because it's the start of the River Allen. And there's a section there near the rugby club, and over the last 4 years we've been clearing it, and we've gone back every year, and every year we've seen a massive reduction in how much balsam is there. But all the other native plants are just springing up, and it's amazing to see. It's really lovely. We've got so many different species, and this year when we were back, we were seeing lots of different insects that were coming back into that area and using those native species of plants. What we want to do, what ideally we do, is we'll go back and sow some wildflower seeds, or we plant some willow. So quite often, if we've stripped an area of the Himalayan balsam, we'll plant willow along, because willow will root into the riverbank and help to stabilise the bank as well. So we do try and get back whenever we can, and you can see a massive difference. Sometimes it takes, you know, a couple of seasons to see the difference, because the seeds can survive in the soil for up to 3 or 4 years. So sometimes it will take that much effort to really clear an area, but you can see when you've made a difference. And talking about that, we did have the area that I use for my woodworking in Aberdeen actually had a lot of Himalayan balsam around that area when I first started working there, because we've got ponds and it's at the side of the road, and the Himalayan balsam was spreading along the road and down to the pond, and there was absolutely loads of it, and now there's none. We've cleared it. Me and my volunteers have cleared it over the last 4 years, and this year we found one stray Himalayan balsam plant, and that was it. So it is doable.
Missed seed. Yeah. No, that's right. You can actually get rid of it, can't you, if you're really diligent over a number of years. I know there's locally to us in Rowan, there's the Friends of the Earth have been trying to clear it from the river catchments that goes through Rowan, you know, and they're doing fantastic work. I know that. The French group,
it's very effective, as long as it's not going to still keep coming from upstream. So that's why we have to work at a catchment level.
Yeah.
I believe they started upstream.
Yeah.
So that was
they're working down as far as we know. It's and there's a lot of people, like quite a few people in the chat are mentioning balsam in the Cravenant Valley, leading into the Conwy, Conwy catchment. Both sides of the road from Landroos to Trevorrow, and we can drive down to Trevorrow and we see both sides of the road, you know.
Yes, it frustrates me so much. when I drive down there, I see it all, and
And Dave, I don't know whether Dave wants to come on, Dave, but he said he'd like to get involved with actually getting rid of it, really, some kind of project or whatever maybe. Is that something that might happen at some point? Down the Conwy Valley.
We're trying to set up local action groups. So because there aren't enough of us, and North Wales is a massive area, we're trying to encourage individuals to set up a group themselves. So if you fancy doing that, Dave, you know, you're more than welcome to start your own Himalayan balsam pulling group, and we can provide you with any advice or ID guides or any help. But we just don't have the manpower to cover all, because there's Himalayan balsam in so many areas, and we just don't have the manpower to cover all those areas. But we've got our Warren project in particular are helping local action groups. So just individuals that go out there and say, you know, get other people to come and join them, and they become a local action group, and then you can get support, and you can even get funding to buy equipment and things like that. So if there isn't already a group in your area, which there might be, and we might be able to find out if there is a group for you if you want to contact us about that. But we can help you set up a group if not, or you can just go out on your own and just pull it. You know, as long as it's on a public right of way, you're perfectly fine to just pull it, and you don't need gloves on, and you can just leave it at the side of the road where you've pulled it, and it will just rot away.
Yeah, I think if it's a bit like picking up litter, isn't it? Picking up, you pull out balsam if you see it.
Yeah.
But if you want to make a concerted effort, it's a case of being guided to where to start and where to go, really, how to, and the time of year too.
Yeah. Yes.
What's the is there an optimum time of year? There's a time of year when you should do it up to, at least, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it varies what area you're in, because Himalayan balsam's very it's kind of an opportunist, so it will start flowering early if it's got good conditions. If it's got bad conditions, it starts to flower later. If it's shady, it tends to flower later. So even in the same area, you can get different stages of the plant. So it's best if you can start to head out sort of late spring, early summer, and just have a look to see where the balsam is. And you can pull it as soon as you see it starting to come up. It's quite distinctive even when it's very small, but it's really back-breaking to pull it up when it's really small. So we recommend waiting till it's tall enough that it's in full leaf and hopefully starting to flower. The best time to pull it is when it's in flower, but then avoid pulling it when it starts to go to seed, because obviously you run the risk of spreading it even further then.
Okay.
It tends to be a summer job. It's late summer when you do it.
Okay. That's good. That's very useful. Thank you. Thanks, David. Thanks to everybody there who's mentioned the balsam there. There's Chris is here again. Oh, we've seen another one. I saw a hornet a month or so ago in trading. Not reported that one yet.
Oh, lovely. Was it a native European one?
Was it an Asian one? Yeah.
No, I think it was a European one. I couldn't.
Oh, excellent.
Not an Asian one. Thank goodness for that. Yeah.
No, it's the first time I'd actually seen one, so I was quite surprised. But you couldn't mistake the coloration, but it just wouldn't stay still long enough for me to grab a picture of it, which was a shame.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're really beautiful, aren't they? I think native hornets are gorgeous. They're really lovely. I mean, I'm scared of them, but they're very mighty creatures, but they're beautiful.
Thanks, Chris. David's saying, is there any legislation that a landowner would be breaking if they allowed Himalayan balsam on their land?
Yeah, they're not supposed to allow it to spread onto other land. There is legislation to support this, but whether anybody enforces it is another matter. So all you can do really is if you know that a landowner is allowing it to spread, is just report it either to us or to the council. NRW are the people that sort of deal with that legislation. So yeah, just reporting it is the best thing you can do, and then us or Natural Resources Wales can go out and maybe speak to that landowner and inform them what they're doing and try and stop them spreading it. But yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people are allowing it to spread, and more needs to be done about it, really.
Do you ever come across beekeepers that quite like it?
Yes, we do. Yeah. Beekeepers are quite in favour of Himalayan balsam. I understand that, bees and wasps absolutely love Himalayan balsam, but it's a very rich source of nectar. It's very sweet and sickly, and they will keep going to that and then just avoid our native plants. So we do try and speak to beekeepers and just say, we understand that you like it, it makes the honey taste different, but please consider the environmental impact that Himalayan balsam is having, and please get rid of it. But yeah, I know some people want to keep it.
That's great. Yeah. Just a couple of more things come up. So Chris is apologising for his signal disappearing down again. No problem, Chris. That's fine. It's great comments, great questions too. Right, I think no actually more questions. Just people saying maybe they should start pulling the balsam rather than just enjoying it. I mean, that's right. I mean, it's like everything, isn't it? Really, all these invasives, they might look nice, but they do prevent our natives from thriving.
Yes.
One thing that's and if we allow them to kind of just continue to kind of dominate, because they don't, because I don't think the thing eats a lot. No,
It doesn't seem to. I have noticed while I've been pulling it that things are starting to nibble at it. So things like snails and some of the insects we come across, they are on it and they are nibbling at it, but they're not nibbling at it enough to actually make a difference. But one of the other, I don't think I mentioned, one of the other pilots we're trialing is a rust fungus on the Himalayan balsam. So we've had some rust fungus shipped over from Kashmir, and it's been tested in a laboratory, and they've said that it's very effective at it causes the rust fungus on the underside of the leaves of the balsam, and then it prevents it growing properly and stunts its growth, and eventually will help to kill it off. But we've been trialing it, but it's really, really expensive to buy the rust fungus. And then it's quite difficult to find a patch of Himalayan balsam that you don't mind leaving to trial the rust fungus on, in the hope that it'll then spread to other bits. So it's a bit of a tricky one to manage, because you need an area of balsam that is safe to leave there, that's not going to risk spreading, but that can spread the fungus sort of thing. So it's another trial that we're doing, but it's quite complicated.
Yeah, fair enough. That's something for the effort. But sheep seem to like it. Is that right? Sheep?
Yeah, the sheep love it. Yeah, and sheep are really good at grazing things like giant hogweed as well. It doesn't seem to. There's certain species of sheep that it doesn't hurt their mouths, that it doesn't burn them. So they're actually quite effective at grazing, and they will graze Japanese knotweed as well if it's young. If it's like when it first comes up, it's a bit like asparagus, and they will nibble it back when it's small. So they're quite an effective way of managing a lot of the invasives.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. But that must be a bit tricky as well, because you've got to kind of fence them in and things like that. I mean,
yeah, that's the downside. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Well, if anyone else has got a question, anybody got a last question, last comment, that'd be great. Thank you, Grace. I think we've. Is there anything else you want to add? I don't know. I'm going to make an appeal for volunteers, really, on your behalf, because I think that's obviously what you need, and I think you do a fantastic job of introducing the younger generation into learning about the invasive species, and the fact of there being invasive non-native species. You know what I mean? That fact itself is something people perhaps don't fully know about. They just see species out there and think that's all right, but without knowing that some of them are not good and need to be controlled and removed completely where possible.
That's why it's really good to get out to a lot of events. If we can get out to events, it's really good just to talk to members of the public and take along samples of the crayfish to show people what a crayfish looks like. So a lot of people don't know what they are, and pictures of the Himalayan balsam. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I see that plant when I'm out walking my dog. I didn't realise it was bad because it's so pretty." And you then get conversations about people saying, "Well, why are you removing it? Because it's a lovely pink flower, and then you're going to leave just bare ground." But then we do say, then you've got the chance for native plants and species to come back and thrive, and you get a lot more variety, then a lot more biodiversity, because you just get a monoculture if it's just all Himalayan balsam and nothing else. You need more, you need variety. So it's really nice to have those conversations with people.
Yeah, because in some ways you can only do so much. It really needs to be done by the community, doesn't it, and individuals. A bit like the old like litter picking years ago was like not done, was it? But now it's like people are just doing it all over the place, and there are events and whatever, and people are just doing it in their own communities. And knowledge gives you kind of the authority to actually do this and explain to someone who says, "What the heck are you doing over there?" What I mean? It's good. Yeah.
There's two things.
Oh,
We've got Janice asking a question about ragwort. Is it still an invasive?
Yeah, ragwort's still an issue, and we do still pull it. We tend to pull that. It's more we don't tend to pull that as the invasives team. We leave that for the reserves team, because we've got our reserves officers who manage it on the reserves. But if it's just out on a riverbank, we won't pull it, because it's not an invasive there. It's only really a problem if it's in a field where we've got livestock, or we're going to be using it as a hay cut, because obviously we don't want it to get into the hay. So that's more of we don't really deal with it on our project.
No,
So,
well, it's just,
yeah.
well, it's
And it's such a
because it's native,
good
though, isn't it?
plant,
It is a
isn't it, as
native
well?
species in
Yeah.
a sense, anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very good for lots of insects. Insects all over absolutely love ragwort, and especially the cinnabar moth, which it's its main food source. So if we pull it all up, then they're gonna really suffer for it. So we don't pull it as a rule unless it's on the reserves.
Oh, fair enough. That's good. That's good. Is that okay, Janice? Yeah. Good.
Dave had his hand up, he's put it down again, so I think he must have changed his mind.
just double check it. Chris is offering to say it's trying to come along as I'm local, but just work gets in the way. I suppose it does, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, we do find that a lot. A lot of people say, "Oh, do you do things at the weekends?" And I try to avoid doing things at the weekend because
Right,
obviously I like to go out to the mountains at the weekend.
Good, yeah.
But yeah, it is difficult trying to develop volunteer sessions for people to attend because everybody's got different, work patterns or lifestyles and things. So you can't please everybody. At the moment, we just do a Tuesday volunteer session. So if anybody's over Mould Way on a Tuesday, then feel free to join us we're kind of into the Wellbeing time of year again now, where we're doing a lot of the green woodworking. So if you fancy coming out and carving a spoon or doing a nature walk or something, then feel free to come and join us. And we'll be starting with Inns work again in the spring next year.
That's good. That's good.
It's superb what you're doing with the mindfulness and the green woodworking.
Yes,
I think it's really good.
really good. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It's so much fun. I absolutely love doing it. It's just it's one of my passions. So I'm very lucky to be able to deliver that as part of my job.
Superb.
Just a quick last one. I usually kind of send out an email with any feedback information. Is there anything else, anything that you'd like, any links or whatever that you think I could include in that to send to people? If you could let me know, I can put that in if that's okay. Links to your group or whatever, volunteering, any kind of things that might be of added interest. I can send that out to people, and they can then.
That'd be great.
At their leisure, really, kind of maybe join in. You know what I mean? And
yeah, that'd be fine.
Kind of give us a bit of an idea. I mean, there's other Conwy Valley. Obviously members here and some members of the committee here, so we like the idea of kind of maybe a community project, really, not necessarily for us individually to all do, but to kind of initiate a community project where local people will get involved, so that might be something we could maybe kind of look into,
Yeah, definitely, that'd be really good. That'd be great.
Okay. Right, I can't think of anything else, and it's just 9 o'clock. And it's going to be finished by 9. So really, that's it's inspiring, really. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All people's comments are pretty much saying the same sort of thing. So I can't think if I missed anybody, please say so. I think we've got everybody. So thank you very much. I've learned a lot. I mean, I've got a long list here, but it's the eDNA I find fascinating. I really kind of nice to know the results of that. That'd be really good to see. Just last one, I think we had Kirsty, the ecosystem invaders. Is that the same part of your project, or is that something different?
Yeah, that's kind of part of our Warren project. So there's details of it on our website, or there should be anyway. But yeah, the Warren project deal with that, and they've got like weekly quizzes that we send out on our social media, and people can take part in those. So if you're interested in that, have a look at the Warren page on our website, and should be some information there, or get in touch with us and I can answer any questions that way.
Okay, thank you. That's that last one, really. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I'll leave it again to enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, and thank you for giving your time, really. And I think
welcome.
But don't go away just yet, because I'm going to ask people. But I'm sure we've got a few people left to unmute themselves.
They don't have to show themselves.
They don't have to. You can show themselves if they wish to. You can put your video on, and you can unmute yourselves and give Helen a round of applause as a thank you. Okay.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Helen.
You're very welcome.
Five people have just said thank you. 5 people have just thanked you, Helen.
Very much.
Very interesting talk. Thank you.
I'm glad you've all enjoyed it. Thank you.
I enjoyed it. A very pleasant manner about you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
And
Bye.
I love your
You
background.
can give us a talk about your kind of your woodworking skills next time. Okay.
Yeah, I could do that actually. Yeah.
That'll be the next one. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for
care.
coming. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. We'll maybe see you next time. Okay. And okay. Bye everybody.
Good night to everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, Helen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Good night. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Fantastic.